They said some very harsh things, obviously, about Ron Paul because he's our leading patriot in Congress who stopped these Law of the Sea Treaty ratification, which is dear to their bloody hearts. So, the harshest comment made was by a guy who said he'd like to get Ron Paul and all of his supporters on one airplane with a Muslim suicide pilot and take them down. That was the harshest comment made, but there were a lot of mean-spirited comments made as the Bilderberg boys gathered in the lobby of the hotel. So yes, they are. They're outraged, they're angry, and they're very depressed about the whole liberty. They're very upset with all these patriotic Americans resisting their program, and the fact that Americans are so successful at it because the program planned by Bilderberg has been set back for years, and every year it gets worse, and every year they get more depressed, and every year they get more outraged. So we're winning, they're losing.
Hello everyone, welcome to Global Government News. Today is June 1st, 2012, and I'm Darko. This is my website, ggnonline.com. Also on YouTube, it's ddarko2012 and ddarko2013, so please subscribe. Also, there's a poll up here. There's 1 day left. If you haven't voted, what are the chances of a stage alien invasion or space threat? It could be comets or asteroids during a 2012 London Olympics. So far, 7% of people say it's going to happen, no questions, and a very good chance. So far, 19% are saying there's a very good chance. It could happen, but who knows when, is the majority at 50%. And actually, the second highest was 22%, never going to happen, grab your tinfoil hat. And lastly, there's a little spot there you can subscribe and put in your email address. And if you'd like to help GGN out, you can donate right there. So, all right, I'm ready to go here and start with the economy. The first article we have is The Endgame 2012 and 2013 will usher in the end, the scariest presentation ever. So it goes off this individual, Raoul Pal, almost sounds like Ron Paul here, kind of ironic. Global Macro Fund in London for GLG Partners. He also worked for Goldman Sachs. And it goes on and it says that he's living in Spain, and it is his writings, his most recent writings that they're concerned about, and specifically in his latest presentation, which is, for lack of a better word, the most disturbing and scary forecast of the future of the world we've ever seen. And it goes on, it says, consider this. It says, we don't know exactly what is to come, but we can all join the very few dots from where we are now to the collapse of the first major bank. With very limited room for government bailouts, we can very easily join the next dots from the first bank closure to the collapse of the whole European banking system, then to the bankruptcy of the governments themselves. It says here there are almost no brakes in the system to stop this, and almost no one realizes the seriousness of the situation. It says the problem is not government debt per se. The real problem is that 70 trillion in G10 debt is the collateral for 700 trillion in derivatives. Yes, that equates to 1,200% of global GDP, and it rests on very, very weak foundations. And keep moving on here. It says, from an EU crisis, we only have to join one dot for a UK crisis of equal magnitude. And it says, and then do you think Japan and China would not be next? And then would you think that the U.S. would survive unscathed? It says that this is the end of the fractional reserve banking system and of fiat money. Basically, it goes on, it says if it continues, bonds will be stuck at 1% in U.S., Germany, UK, and Japan. And it says the whole bond market will be dead. Short selling on bonds banned, on short selling on stocks banned, CDs banned, short futures banned, put options banned. All that is left is the dollar and gold. United States economic growth slows to 1.9%, so just about 2% in the first quarter of 2012. It says here the U.S. Commerce Department said on Thursday that it lowered its gross domestic product estimate for the first quarter of the year to 1.9% from an initial estimate of 2.2%. It says here the downward revision has reportedly been largely due to a sharp increase in the U.S. trade deficit, decline in private investment and consumer spending, as well as strong rise in imports. And of course, it probably has to do with unemployment as well, but it says here in Alabama, more than 20,000 people applied for 877 job openings, at an automobile factory should not come as a surprise with unemployment over 8% and the real unemployment around 20%, that good paying jobs in manufacturing are harder than ever to land. Protests greet final passage of Denver homeless camping ban. The Denver City Council approved a homeless camping ban Monday night in the face of an angry crowd that taped dollar bills to their mouths chanting shame after the 9-4 vote and staged a sit-in outside the chambers. So it goes on, it says the mayor is expected to sign the bill into law today. The ordinance forbids unauthorized camping on public and private property in Denver and will go into effect May 30th, giving police time to learn the procedures on how to deal with homeless people caught illegally sleeping outside. Homeless people illegally sleeping outside. Well, it's always been like that. I mean, it sounds really bad when you read about it like that, but it is. You know, it's there's laws for everything. And I saw an article today on Yahoo. It wasn't a Yahoo, well, maybe it was a Yahoo article, but it's now it's talking about the United States. Is it turning into a nanny state? Well, using one of the examples of the baggy pants being fined for that now, and they'll keep coming out with stuff like that, and they do it in the UK too, because they're not they're not free. I mean, they know it out there too. Anyone that has a brain out there in the UK, they know that they're not free. So when they see these things about nanny states, it's just like, it's not about nanny states, it's about tyranny. They should be calling it that, because there's all these laws for everything. I mean, there's even laws for being homeless. I mean, just try being homeless and try just moving around, quote, freely. You're going to have a hard time doing it. You're going to be harassed by the police and by the state, by the city governments all the time. And they're just going to keep pushing you into these, oh, go to a homeless shelter, go to a homeless shelter. And then they have, of course, the biggest thing is that you got other slaves that have their good little slave job locked and loaded. And what? They say, oh, why don't you get a job? Quit being lazy. Well, okay. Well, real unemployment rate around 20%. Things are getting bad, not looking any better. Economic growth downgraded. There's so many examples that it's not getting better. And so when people say that, I just wish they would think twice, And wait till you're in their shoes. It says here, Spain faces total emergency. Oh, and let's not forget, I think it was out in New England where they actually had a homeless. It was actually, these people were working, but they were living out in the woods. I think it was out in New England area somewhere, and they raided it, or they released. The police were getting in there, telling them you got to leave and evicting them and stuff like that. It was like a shanty town, literally, Hooverville. So even if you're working, paying taxes, you still can't be homeless in the woods, right? Spain faces total emergency as fear grips markets. Spain is facing the gravest danger since the end of the Franco dictatorship as the country is frozen out of global capital markets and slides towards an epic showdown with Europe. And it says here, money flies out of Spain. Regions, pressures, talking about bank runs. Spaniards, alarmed by the dire state of their banks, are squirreling money abroad at the fastest rate since records began, figures showed on Thursday. Then we see this article, Spain may speed up EU banking union. So they want this banking union. I'm talking about the globalists, that is, like the people that are meeting at Bilderberg. And how are they going to do this? Well, they're talking about Spain. Oh, Spain's going to speed this up. So the U.S. has joined ranks with EU officials exploring ways to pump Eurozone money directly into Spain's troubled banks instead of having to further burden the state budget, because they care so much about your tax dollars, right? So, yeah, the U.S. Treasury Secretary and Obama, they're all working, right? They're working in the same direction as the International Monetary Fund and World Bank for what? Towards a banking union. But while you have all that going on in the United States, you have your representatives over there worrying about what's going on in Europe. And then you have stuff like this. Remember this, the Fed's $600 billion stealth bailout of foreign banks continues at the expense of domestic economy, or explaining where all that QE2, talking about quantitative easing and the stimulus. This was back in June of 2011, $600 billion, and a lot of it went to foreign banks. So, and it says here, Vatican calls for Central World Bank to be set up. This is back in October of 2011. So maybe this little union, banking union, will be this World Central Bank. So the page is no longer there. So great. It says here, banks pressured to buy government debt. Said in 2011, the Federal Reserve purchased a stunning 61% of U.S. debt. I don't know if you guys remember that article. But it says here last year they purchased 61% of the total net treasury issuance, up from an amount prior to the 2008 financial crisis. So it says it gives it a false appearance of limitless demand for U.S. debt. And then via CNBC, U.S. and European regulators are essentially forcing banks to buy up their own government's debt, a move that could end up making the debt crisis even worse, Citigroup analysis says. While that helps governments issue more and more debt, the strategy could ultimately explode if the governments are unable to make the bond payments, leaving the banks with billions of toxic debt, says Citigroup strategist. Greek pensioner hangs himself in protest that Greece will be wiped off the map. 2 months ago, an elderly Greek took his life in broad daylight in Athens Central Square, decrying the country's traitors and government preferred to take his own life than to defer his debts to his children. I love these people that say, well, if you kill yourself, you're letting everyone else down. You're a weakling, right? You're not looking out for your children that you can't take care of. That's why it's economic warfare. This is war, man. They're trying to kill our families. They're trying to kill our society. And they just want to have them douchebags left with a bunch of zombies literally biting each other and stuff. Fishing through garbage cans for sustenance, which they're also doing. Remember, I titled that dumpster diving. So it says here, a 61-year-old pensioner was found hanging from a tree on Wednesday in the park of this area. A lifeless body of the pensioner was discovered by a park attendant who also found a suicide note, which read as follows. The police do not know me. I've never touched a drink in my life. Women and drugs I've never even dreamed of. I've never been to a coffee house. I just worked all day. But I committed one horrendous crime. I became professional at age 40 and I plunged myself into debt. Now I'm an idiot of 61 years old and I have to pay. I hope my grandchildren are not born in Greece, seeing as there will be no Greeks here from now on. Let them at least know another language, because Greek will be wiped off the map, unless, of course, there was a politician with Thatcher's balls so as to put us and our state in line. According to his neighbors, prior to taking his own life, he was seen wearing his work overalls, carrying his tools, and sitting on a bench in the park. Next up, Wells Fargo foreclosure leads man to commit suicide. This is from 5/2012, so this is the middle of last month, and I don't know if you guys remember that, but Wells Fargo seizes Stockton, California City Hall. So it says here they announced Wednesday that they will look at bankruptcy contingency plans after Wells Fargo seized a new City Hall building. So Wells Fargo on the march, right? U.S. cities lose property tax, state aid, says report. So for the first time since 1980, property tax revenue and state aid to cities across the United States are shrinking simultaneously, the Pew Charitable Trust said in a report on Thursday. So the big thing is that a lot of people don't have the money to pay taxes. I mean, they're having to choose, when the last Bilderberg in 2008, I remember they were talking about the housing crisis. I think it was Daniel Estlin, and he was saying that they were increasing oil prices so that people wouldn't make their mortgage payments and blah, 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 blah. So, I mean, they have these little dials and buttons that they can push to get a certain result. And the biggest thing is like with Spain, and now they get their banking union. So the biggest thing is, who gives a shit about providing services, right? If we could just trade freely, i.e. don't have to use the Federal Reserve note and trade with whatever we want to trade, barter, and then not have to pay for all these, quote, services, then we might actually be okay. We would still be okay, but they want to keep tricking us and fooling us, even in certain truth movements, that we got to have this government. We got to restore the republic. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, no, let it crumble, and then we'll have an opportunity to try to get some freedom. But unfortunately, I know it till the day I die, which I don't know how long it'll be. People are just going to sit there and they're going to fight for the system that helped enslave them. It's insanity to me. Machine gun nests and unprecedented security for secretive Bilderberg meeting. It says here they're actually deploying satellite surveillance and other sophisticated monitoring equipment to keep guests safe or keep other people out. So there they go. The conspiracy theorists say they're fighting for a new world order. And you can check out some of the listies, HSBC, Deutsche Bank, Goldman Sachs, the Bank of Canada governor, the White House's national security advisor, got their propaganda arm, the Washington Post, an anchorwoman at LA TV. And for some reason, my governor of Indiana, Mitch Daniels, is going to be there. So you have globalist Bill Clinton saying Romney had a sterling business career and crosses the qualification threshold for CEO. Then we have top Mitt Romney donors. Well, most of them went to the Bilderberg group. You'll see the same names. 91-year-old World War II vet accused of ineligible voting. See, he thought he was fighting for his freedom. No, you were fighting for your enslavement. So China buys up Spain's assets, and then Japan and China to start direct currency trading on Friday. This is GGN. Thank you.